I made this video. We have a lot to be thankful for, and though I wanted to stay on hiatus, a lot of things had been going on. So, including this, it showed up in my feed, and I am absolutely heartbroken. But 111 years are beautiful years to live. I've decided to read the story about Viola Fletcher from Al Jazeera, but I've also given you all her copy of the link to her obituary. So if you want to go read that, please go read it. There's going to be a lot I'm going to say about this tribute. This is more than just me reading a story. I'll give you the musical tribute after the fact, and I'll put a little Vecteezy images to go with it. This is a sad day, and after I read the story, I'll give my commentary. So without further ado, here's a story from Al Jazeera. Viola Fletcher, one of the last survivors of Oklahoma's 1921 Tulsa Massacre, has died at age 111. Despite her advanced age, Fletcher was a well-known activist thanks to her work trying to win justice for the victims of one of the worst episodes of racial violence in United States history. Today, our city mourns the loss of Mother Viola Fletcher. She was a survivor of one of the darkest chapters in our city's history and endured more than anyone should, Tulsa Mayor Monroe Nichols wrote in a Facebook post. Mother Fletcher carried 111 years of truth, resilience, and grace, and was a reminder of how far we've come and how far we must still go. Fletcher was 7 years old at the time of the Tulsa Massacre in Oklahoma, a state living under the Jim Crow system that segregated the U.S. South from the end of the 1800s until the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s. The massacre began on May 31st, 1921, when police arrested 19-year-old Dick Rowland, a black shoe shiner, over allegations that he had assaulted a white woman, according to a report by the U.S. Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. When a group of white men gathered at the courthouse calling for Rowland to be lynched, a group of black men from a nearby community responded and tried to protect him before all hell broke out, the report said. Over the next 2 days, vigilante groups and law enforcement looted and burned down 35 blocks of Tulsa's Greenwood district, which was then home to one of the wealthiest black communities in the U.S. The Bureau of Labor Statistics of 2024 estimated that the scale of the damage was around $32.2 million when adjusted for inflation. As many as 300 residents of Tulsa were killed and another 700 injured, the report said, although the final tally is unknown because many were buried in unmarked graves. Survivors like Fletcher and her family were forced to leave the area. Left destitute, her family became sharecroppers, a form of subsistence work where farmers give over almost all their harvest to their landlord. Rowland was never charged. After Sarah Page, the Lyft operator he was accused of assaulting, said that she did not want to prosecute the case. Despite the scale of devastation, the Tulsa Massacre received limited national attention until Oklahoma State launched an investigative commission in 1997. Efforts to win compensation for victims in 2001, however, failed due to the statute of limitations. On the centennial anniversary of the massacre, Fletcher testified before the U.S. Congress in 2021 about her experiences and co-authored a memoir, Don't Let Them Bury My Story, with her grandson in 2023. Fletcher was mourned by U.S. leaders like former President Barack Obama. As a survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre, Viola Fletcher bravely shared her story so that we never forget this painful part of our history. Michelle and I are grateful for her lifelong work to advance civil rights and send our love to her family. Obama posted on X. This story particularly saddens me because for years, being born in 1980 and then joining the military, I was one of those naive black people that thought you really could pull yourself from your bootstraps and be better. Don't get me wrong, growing up in North Alabama, I've always known we are not living in a post-racial society. And given the mess going on now up into her passing this week, I'm not naive to think that racism will ever go away in the United States. Me personally, it's ingrained in our culture. It's like apple pie. Get mad at me about that statement if you will. Might lose subs, and I'm okay with that. I'm not here to push the hatred of any one race or one group of people, as that's not in my heart. Viola Fletcher, I didn't even know that there were survivors of Tulsa still alive until a couple of years ago when Viola and there's one more survivor, and I think that survivor's brother just passed too, all made it to 100. If you're not religious, this would probably be the time for you to click off before I do the musical tribute. Here's the thing. The fact that the title of her book was Don't Let Them Bury My Story, the fact that she lived to 111 to me seemed ordained by the Most High. And what I mean is the three of them living to 100 plus years old in a world where they went from Jim Crow and industrialization to now artificial intelligence, because she went to the afterlife just as artificial intelligence was picking up, is the Most High's way of saying no matter how much time has passed, no matter where you've moved forward, until this is resolved, restitution, this nation will never get its footing and will never fully heal. I was at one point one of them Republican. This stuff happened in the past and it was awful. I never downplayed it, but I always felt like there were ways to racially move forward. In the spiritual, as I said, I have no hatred in my heart for people. Now I realized the whole you can get out of the crabs out of a bucket, which I still believe that, and you can pull yourself up from your bootstraps, no longer believe that. It's just nonsense. Hard work doesn't get you anywhere, because this community worked hard in less than 100 years out of slavery to have a thriving community. What did they get in return? To be marched in the streets and humiliated over what? An allegation from a woman who herself didn't want to press charges. Someone had to finally explain to me in 2024, it was probably Mr. Burns of the Solomon Project, who I'm sub to on YouTube. Because that song, They Dropped a Bomb on Me, I never understood that. And I can remember having to go to God, because once I realized the meaning of that song, dropping the bomb on me referred to Tulsa, I was angry. We have never fully, throughout the 100 years since that happened, let that go. Viola never met me and never knew me, but this woman was the catalyst to why I intentionally now shop black-owned businesses. And don't get me wrong, I will shop businesses that are not black-owned. But when people get on this YouTube or on TikTok, because I heard they show their butt on TikTok or any other social media, why do people have to emphasize black-owned businesses? I will shop any business. And we know primarily who does this misses the point that restitution was never paid to Tulsa, but plenty of restitution was paid to other groups. And we know who they are, so I'm not going to make that video about this. When I looked up in my feed and saw that the news coverage throughout the world said she had passed, my heart broke. She lived a long, fulfilled life, but not completely fulfilled and not seeing this restitution. And even like I said, at the time, I was one of those Republican people that believed we didn't need reparations. That happened long time ago. Not taken into account until I found out around the pandemic that people from Tulsa were still alive and have vivid memories of what happened, because the last three that lived, the male has since passed away. Now there's one more lady. It's not a coincidence that the Most High allowed them to keep their mental faculties. Why? Because He hasn't let this go. And look, I'm not talking about vengeance against people for the sake of vengeance against people. I am talking about the mere fact that restitution has to be paid for wrongdoing. She opened my mind and my heart in two respects. Number one, I don't trust any of these political parties. I think they're all out for self. People who talk all this flowery stuff, it's all nice and good and all, but it doesn't solve anything. Number two, I now intentionally shop black owned and have been doing it for the past few years. The stats line up that black owned businesses don't get nearly the respect that they do. Imagine being woke up by your parents and everything you knew that they worked hard for was taken away just because of a physical feature they cannot control. And how dare them do what we wanted them to do, to have separate but equal, but we're still going to take that away and let them know that they will never be nothing. I think the title of that book was her letting us know they're going to try to bury this now that we're not living, because the people who did this back then, their ancestors didn't anticipate that the Most High was going to let 3 people live to 100, keep their full faculties, and testify to what they saw years ago. See, Viola was more than just a person that's in a history book and a part of a historical massacre that happened, because let's call it what it is. It was a massacre. She lived to give detail of what she saw that day. And she lived to 111 years old. God has His hands on restitution. Now that's going to make some people mad. I don't care. At this week, whether you celebrate Thanksgiving or not, this one woman taught me to be grateful and to examine myself and examine my attitude towards the restitution that our ancestors, who are descendants of slaves in this land, have earned. What you all want to call an entitlement, we call restitution. And yes, some people might misuse that money. That's not the point. I'm going to buy her book. I'm going to continue to shop black owned. I've already been doing it for the holidays for DeAndre Dobbs, the show. That's why it's taken me so long to send his stuff, because I intentionally bought some things from black businesses. I'm going to soldier on and continue to do this. This woman is literally the reason that I shop black owned now. Because the statistics aren't holding up for us, and we're approaching 2030. This has been bothering me since I found out about her, because we really cannot let her story die down, y'all. All right, I'm going to play the musical tribute. Thank you all so much for taking time out in your busy week to review this, look at this. Keep Viola Fletcher's family in your prayers. Enjoy your holidays and have a good one. Here's the tribute.